Get a light on, eh? How's that? A little better? Oh, possibly. Anyways, I thought I'd move this camera quickly. There we go. Maybe a bit. Oh, dear me. How's that? That's better. So I'm live a little bit early. That's just to get everybody going. How's everybody doing? I think, seeing something alarming on my windows. They're talking about the temperature dropping. Fun times. Let's see. Come on. No. So they're talking about 46. It's dropping to 29. And then tomorrow it goes 29 to 51. Okay. Ooh, Wednesday, it's going to be 21. So what's that in Celsius? Hold on. Okay, how do I go back now? Just close it and go back in. Okay, so it's 8 at the moment. It drops down to -2 tonight, and then Wednesday -6, -6 to 8. Fahrenheit. Yeah, fun times. 601. So let me do this. So I think one or two people joined. Hello, happy Sunday. I hope everybody's had a wonderful weekend thus far. I definitely have. Thursday, obviously Thanksgiving. Had a good meal. Had a proper sleep. And I did get to do some work. In fact, I had to do a little bit of work, nothing major. And then obviously Friday was fun. Kept it fairly cool, calm, and collected at home. Didn't do much. The afternoon, I drove Zach to work, picked him up again. I mean, that's the most exciting thing that I did. Nothing, well, not much more than that, to be honest. Yeah, so it was nice. And then Saturday I wasn't in the mood for anything. I was just taking it easy. To be honest, Saturday was one of those days where I could easily have spent the entire day in bed. In fact, I should have done that, but I didn't. In fact, today was one of those days where I could spend very comfortably the entire day in bed, and I didn't do it. So last week, Sam asked about the cameras. There's a video coming, just putting the finishing touches on it. So yeah, it's gonna be a little bit of fun. Other than that, life's been good. Life has been good. I think, if I remember correctly, last week when we spoke, I left my top 100 um, at number 90, if I remember correctly. 91. Well, either way, I have a couple more for you. That's what I can say. So from 89 to really 80, I suppose the question would be, from last week's bands, what would I add in? Well, fairly simple. I would add in the following. I would start with David Bowie, Ziggy Stardust, Let's Dance, China Girl. And this is an homage to a very, very good friend of mine, Belinda. Belinda was the kind of person who you just either loved or hated. Um, I'll give you an idea of how cool Belinda was. Belinda was Belinda Keeley, but it took her probably an entire afternoon to explain her history of her last name, because it started with O'Reilly, Riley, O'Kiley, Keeley. And somewhere along the line, I figured out that she is a gem of a person who I love dearly as a friend and will always love her dearly as a friend. And one of her top people was Bowie. So Ziggy Stardust, just fantastic. That drew me in. I remember in her grand's apartment in Hillbrow, we would have conversations about yay big, like monstrous stuff when you're in your late teens, early 20s. I remember her being the coolest person at that stage of my life that I've ever met. I remember so many fun times. You know, people kept on thinking that we were kind of in a relationship. We never were. We were always just mates. Always. There was never anything between us, but we loved each other as friends very dearly. So I'll say to those people, um, you know, I'm in my 50s. She must be in her 50s as well, maybe late 40s, 50s. And yeah, I care about her as a mate. Her, it was Christy Schiller. I forget her last name. There was also a story behind the story that became an interesting fact somewhere along the line. Christy, who I love dearly, Belinda and Jack tried to set me up with Christy, and we were just mates. Christy felt the same way. So yeah, it was great times. And Bowie was Belinda's, like, one of her main people she loved. So in honor of Belinda, David Bowie, who sadly passed away January 10th, 2016. So this one's on you, mate. Midnight Oil. I put out an entire video on Midnight Oil. 1993, 1994, probably 94. I forget, somewhere along the line. My mate Wayne and I, we were on our way somewhere, possibly Doors, a nightclub. He had finished work. He lived in Randburg. I stayed with him over weekends. It was always a lot of fun. And we had played Coinage. I was possibly not as good as he was with Coinage. So, long story short, we drove to watch Midnight Oil. They played live. Had a girl on my shoulders. I won't tell the story. Wayne had her friend on his shoulders, and he pulled me aside and he said, "You ever do that again, we will have words. I won't explain any more than that." Ended up going to the Doors and possibly a couple of other places, and it turned out to be a fun evening. Woke up the Sunday morning and went swimming, if I remember correctly. So those were fun times. Midnight Oil, obviously, The Dead Heart, Beds Are Burning, and they had another song which was really good. Truganini, True something, Traffanini, something. I forget the song, but yeah, had a couple of really good songs that was a lot of fun to listen to, and I properly enjoyed it. Now, my wife and Belinda met only once, and they started talking about Bowie and Sting. Uh, One of Belinda's favorite bands ever, Sting. Well, not bands, obviously, artists. Sting will also feature here somewhere along the line, but they started talking about Bowie, Sting, and then they went into Roxy Music. Now, Brian Ferry I knew of, but I wasn't too familiar with his music. But I got exposed to it on that one time that they met. And I can't remember whether it was in the car or where it was. But anyways, long story short, we had a fun old time with Brian Ferry and Roxy Music. More than this, obviously a fantastic song, Avalon, and possibly one of the greatest ballads, I would say, not the greatest, but one of those great ballads, Slave to Love. So I would lump Brian Ferry and Roxy Music in one. And yeah, that was a lot of fun, which got me thinking of that same era, the late 80s, early 90s. What other music I used to listen to? Similar conversation where Eurythmics came up, and Eurythmics, Annie Lennox is possibly one of my favorite people on the face of the earth. Her and Bono, Edge, Larry, the YouTube crowd, Adam, all of those guys. She's just in that crowd of people. But would I lie to you, Sweet Dreams? And Love is a Stranger comes to mind just off the top of my head. So Eurythmics, what an absolute special time that was, wasn't it? And then how can I not add the Wilson sisters in here? So I have to think about Heart. Now, I've made a video about it. I can't remember whether it was possibly a short and a longer format videos. Can't remember whether a longer format video ever came out or whether I ever released it, but that's not the importance right this very second. So how can you talk about Heart without talking about the Wilson sisters, who are possibly, I reckon, just fantastic. I listened to their music. I can't remember how it. I bought a bunch of tapes off of eBay the other day, a couple of months back, and in it was some kind of Heart collection. And then my daughter asked me to get Bad to the Bone. I can't remember who the artist was, and Crazy on You was on there. So Crazy on You drove me into listening to the collection of tapes I just got off of eBay, which then obviously led to Barracuda, from, what was that, 77, 78, somewhere there. These Dreams, and a couple of songs that when you listen to it, you can't help but imagine it being in this really intense but slightly sappy love ballady movie that my wife would drag me to. But I like the music. So there are 5 bands, 5 artists: Midnight Oil, David Bowie, Roxy Music and Brian Ferry, obviously, Heart, and Eurythmics. And I think that takes us from 89 to 80. So that's what, 9 songs, not really, well, 9 places down. And in my opinion, you can possibly mix the 20 that I've shared thus far, which is 10 bands. But you could probably rank those any way you like, and you would end up with a solid selection. So yeah, that's where I'm at. I think next week, let's get into a little bit more, maybe not rock and roll, but heavier stuff. Boston. Oh, there are a couple of bands. I'm not going to go into it now. Let me not get into it now. But yeah, there are a couple of bands that I'm thinking of to get into for next week. So to continue with the top 10, I reckon as we whittle our way in a really magnificently broad way, as we whittle our way down to, let's say, 50, I think let's as soon as we hit 50, let's put it down to like the top 50 songs of an era, possibly from the 80s, down to no, maybe the 70s. Ooh, just thought of Rolling Stone, possibly the 60s. Should be interesting either way. But yeah, that's what I'm thinking. So up until number 51, let's continue with the way we're going at the moment, calling out bands and like maybe not a top 3 songs, but 3 very famous songs, and then from 50 down to number 1, let's be song specific. So yeah, that's possibly my thinking at the moment. But yeah, that's really all I had planned for today, this Sunday. I have been keeping track of my songs, my bands. Last week, Talk, Madness, Specials. That's another band I can talk about for hours. Madness. To limit them to 3 songs is almost, like they said, embarrassing. They have so many. Fleetwood Mac as well. Chris Rea as well. U2, definitely. I'm sure they're going to surface in the top 50 somewhere. But yeah, that's what I've got for today. So I thank you for watching. Thank you for joining. And have a magnificent rest of your Sunday. I'll say thanks for watching. Cheers.